Welcome back to the Backseat Startup Podcast with your host, Andrew Hutton.
All right, here we go. Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Andrew. This is the Backseat Startup Podcast, the show where we get to riff with founders, exciting new founders, and we take questions from random strangers on the internet and we solve them. But to get there, we're first going to introduce you to our guest for today. I'm on with Geoffrey Schultz, who is the co-founder of Goblet. And Goblet is doing some cool things in the no-low-code space, very much on the technical side of low-code, right? Not something that I would have thought of, but I'm really excited. I'm really here for ideas that are niche and needed and kind of come from the founders who know the problem. So with that little bit of preamble, Geoffrey, welcome to the show. Really glad to have you here.
Thanks a bunch, Andrew. I appreciate you having me, and I look forward to our conversation.
Yeah, let's get into this. So for everyone who doesn't know, which is probably most people, tell us a little bit about Goblet. Give us that elevator pitch. Tell us what you're up to in building.
Sure. So Goblet is the fastest way to automate end-to-end QA tests. We are a low-code, no-code tool that empowers non-technical people to easily create and maintain end-to-end automated tests for web apps.
I love it. I'm glad the no-code is there because, so let me here's my first follow-up question, which is for somebody who's non-technical, like me, why is this important? That's my question.
And me.
Why is this important for a non-technical person? And yourself. Perfect. Yeah. Speak it
Right.
to all of us non-tech, because that's like the beauty of no-code, low-code. We literally transpose things that are technical into the rest of the world. And I know about website making. I know why I need that. I know about, like Airtable, whatever, right? But like, why testing? It's never really crossed my mind to want to do this.
For sure. And it doesn't cross a lot of people's mind until something breaks, is the reality of it. It's kind of like insurance for software. And we've all been impacted by it at one point or another. Earlier this year, what was it? Southwest Airlines had the big issue where a whole bunch of flights were grounded.
Like United went down.
Yeah.
It's wild.
So companies all over the place are pushing out updates to old code, and they're not properly testing it, and they're pushing bugs to production. And when that happens, your customers, your audience ends up being your QA testers, and they find things, they have bad experiences, and that costs you not only goodwill, but sometimes it's downtime. Frustrated customers will cancel. There's a number of reasons why companies should care about it, but oftentimes QA testing is kind of the redheaded stepchild of the development process. And there's a number of reasons for that, but we're trying to solve that so that no company has an excuse to not have adequate coverage on their apps.
This is good. It's probably not going to get necessarily any sexier than it is, but it's going to get easier. It's going to get cheaper. It's going to be more streamlined, and that can be game changing. So, where did this idea come from? You're a non-technical guy. I know this. It's a co-founder story. So yeah, tell us about the origins and where this idea came from.
For sure. So my technical co-founder, Lance Tipton, is the one who had the pain point. He was scratching his own itch. So he and I worked together a number of years ago at a software company, and he is the kind of guy that would organize hackathons and try and just always be pursuing new ideas, pushing himself. How can he learn a new technology? And while talking to some of the QA team at this company, they were expressing their pain point and their problems about how a lot of their testing was just manual, and it was boring and monotonous and awful, and they could never have adequate coverage and all that sort of stuff. And at the same time, as a developer, he saw, he had a much more intimate view of the QA process and how things should be tested but aren't, because nobody likes testing. It's just the reality of it. Like you said, it's not sexy. There's no glamour in it. And so a lot of times it just gets pushed to the side. And so that was kind of the aha moment for him. Like, you know what? I think I could automate these manual tests. And so he began working on it and kind of went into his laboratory and came out with something that he showed to several people and said, oh, this could actually work. And when he got that feedback, he reached out to me and said, hey, man, you want to see if we can turn this into a business and see if it has enough value to sell? And here we are.
That's that organic style of founding story is what I'm really here for. So you guys have startup experience, you've hacked together, you work well together. This problem is real, and the solution, I love it. It's novel. And so where are you in the process? Tell me a little bit about the product. Is it live? Is it launched? Do you have customers? What's the growth trajectory for Goblet?
For sure. So yeah, he began working on it a couple of years ago, actually, and it was part-time, nights and weekends, that sort of thing. And we began really in earnest trying to sell it in January of this year. So we've been up for about 9 months now. Got our first customer about 3 months ago, and that was after just months and months of grinding, doing cold outreach, and just the brutal stuff that you hear founders have to do to try and figure out how to make it work. And so we've got revenue now, and now we're trying to figure out, all right, how do we deliver for this customer, for these customers, and how do we find more like them? And the grind doesn't stop.
Yeah,
it's still the same stuff. It's just now we've got a little bit more wind in our sails. Like, people are willing to pay for this. This is cool.
Yeah, oh my gosh, there's always that's the founder life, is the ups and the downs, and you got to take those wins to maintain you through the troughs. And oh my gosh, there's just so much we could talk about there, just about perseverance needed. It's going to be tough, and you're going to go through those, like you said, grindy moments that are not straight up and to the right. It's often doesn't feel like that, but congrats on customer number one, and hopefully many more, and a product live. That's I feel like the right thing to think about is like, not like, oh, how do I make $1 million? It's like, make your first dollar.
Yes.
Get in the game, and then
for sure,
and then make your next 10 or your next 100 or whatever it is. That's probably the way to go about it.
0 to 1. That's the real hard part.
0 to 0.1, right? Like, get on the chart, right? Like, there's a qualitative difference from 0 and any other discrete number, right? And then go. So really cool, Geoffrey. All right, so we're gonna make sure we recap at the end to make sure everyone knows where to find you and where they can go to sync up with you guys. But let's do what we do and shift gears now that you, the listener, know Geoffrey. Software startup veteran, building Goblet, focused on no code, non-technical, working on a software SaaS product. We're going to go find some problems, some questions that real live people have asked on the internet. We're going to do the scary thing as we do every time and show you some Reddit screens.
Oh boy.
And we're going to find, this always gives me life because it's real. Somebody went out of their way to ask this question or that question, and some of them are really well worded. Here, I kind of scrolled down to one that I thought might be interesting.
Today's episode of the Backseat Startup Podcast is brought to you by SeedScout. SeedScout is a cold outreach alternative that relies 100% on an autonomous double opt-intro system. Log in, pick a plan, and request intros to investors at ease. On SeedScout, know what investors are active, which ones have recently engaged, and send intro requests to ideal investors with a click of a button. Once connected, carry on the conversation over email and feel free to take it off platform. Now, back to the show.
Which maybe is you're the business guy, Geoffrey, right? So we can maybe answer this question, and we haven't asked or answered anything like it on the pod, which is, what financial metrics would you use to determine if a business is financially worth continuing? It's obviously loaded, and maybe the context is deeper, but let's just answer that at a broad question. How do you as a founder, we just talked about getting that first customer, actually. So maybe this is nicely tied in, which is what are the metrics you're paying attention to? Maybe, answer it either as it's stated, which is to know if it's worth continuing, or what are the financial metrics that you're really paying attention to?
Well, are there any dollars flowing in? Is the most obvious one. And do you have more flowing in than are flowing out? What's your profitability? For the first 6 months, we didn't have that. And so then the question that was running through my mind was okay, you hear two contradictory stories in the startup world, or at least I do, which is, on the one hand, it's you got to never give up. Don't ever give up. Just keep going, keep grinding, keep learning. And eventually you'll get it, because everyone else just quits and you're left standing, and eventually you'll figure it out. And then the other side is like, well, sometimes it's just not a great idea, and you should know when to quit and know when to like reprioritize and reallocate your resources to something else. And so it's like, well, shoot. Then the question becomes, what situation am I in? Which path am I on?
Yeah.
And so, for us, I can only speak to that. Is really we started with a hypothesis about what are the activities that we would need to do in order to generate that business. And so, for us, it was like 1,000 cold outreach that are highly personalized and, the best quality we could make. And so looked up that many people, tried to tailor my pitch to them. I was like, all right, if after contacting 1,000 people, I haven't gotten like a single sale, that's going to be a pretty bad indicator.
Yep.
And so we were partway through that process and we landed a sale. And it's like, okay, well, maybe there's something here that we can now start to refine and get better and figure out how we can grow it.
Yeah. Yeah. I love the way you framed it as like, there's this chorus, there are these competing choruses. Really, there's one chorus which says like, don't give up, right? That's like, if you're going to go like create Twitter content, that's what you're going to say, right? And everyone's going to give you the like, oh my gosh, yeah, keep going. I think about that one cartoon of the like of the digger guy, and there's like two tunnels where on the top the guy like turns back and he's like 1 inch away from like diamonds, and it's so like I see this all the time where like the going refrain that you'll never hear anyone else ever say is just never give up, because it's the easy thing that sounds inspirational yet. But let's be freaking real. You should give up before you like put your entire life savings into something and like drive yourself into the ground, right?
For sure.
So I just love the way you said that. I actually wrote an entire newsletter about that concept, and like it gets me fired up because like we really should talk about and like destigmatize like giving up. Giving up is often the right move, and it just means like reprioritizing. It doesn't mean you're like done with entrepreneurship. It doesn't mean like, man, like it just means that you're just actually getting to like a better thing, right?
Yeah.
It's so I'm pretty passionate about the concept of figuring out like, is this really working or not? And I'll now jump off of that to the other thing you said, which is give yourself some sort of like intermediate metric that says like, this has got potential, right? So I'll add a few metrics that I think are really important for folks that are kind of generic, and you probably did these, right? The first is like, not just like a lead list marketing, and maybe you did this, maybe you didn't, because like you said, your co-founder just had this problem, but can you even find 25 other people to not even just have the problem, but like even talk to? Like, do other people have, like, do you even have access to the type of people? Like if I went to go start like a medical device company tomorrow, it would be really freaking hard because I'm just not like a medical device person, right? I just have no, but if I was to go start like a founder service, I would have 1,000 connections, right? Like literally
for sure.
Cold outreach. So that's one that I think about. Like, are you even like in the right space as a founder, right? And that's really early, because if you don't have that, then you're probably just like playing at startups. So I do feel like if I speak to you, your situation, Geoffrey, you guys started there, right? Because it's software people. Your co-founder was scratching an itch. That puts you in the game, right? I know I'm talking a lot. I want to get this next slide out, right? Somewhere between that. So between that and what you said of like, do you have? No, it's really just next is like, can you get a sale, and can you start to kind of fill in a business model that makes sense for you, right?
For sure.
Actually, so something in this conversation, in this post that I think is interesting for everyone is, what do you want out of a business? Like if you want to go raise venture and be the next unicorn, then you actually should have a higher bar for what good looks like.
Yeah.
Right? Like you might need 100 out of 1,000, or like a 10% conversion rate to say this is venture scalable. Yeah. But if you just want to like replace your income, or you just want to create like a $10 million agency or a $5 million agency, you can have a different bar. And that's not to say a lower bar. I hate that thought process too, right? Too low of a bar. Like, no, $5 million, like a real, like replacing your income is such an amazing situation. Anyway, I'm talking a lot. Do you have like a riff on that? Like, I feel like you guys are probably thinking along some of those lines.
Definitely. Part of the challenge for me and for Lance is that there are a lot of these notes that the chorus of the startup community sings that you just sort of latch onto, and you start to think, oh, this is just true, and I need to raise venture. But you could have an awesome experience just being totally bootstrapped, and maybe you don't want to go down this growth at all costs sort of track. Maybe it's really just I want to work with great people. No matter what it is that I'm doing, my goal is just to be around people every day that make me want to perform better and learn more, and that challenge me to be my best. Maybe that is the thing that I'm really getting out of the business, not a dollar amount or anything else. Maybe sometimes it's connections, or there's hundreds of different goals that you could have for why you're doing the business.
Yeah,
and
learning, just going through the experience of what you're going to learn as a founder is like 10x more than what you would do if you never took the leap.
And a lot of times you don't even know the answers to those questions until you've gone a little bit down the road and you bumped into a few things. You're like, oh, I know I don't like that. I want to do something a little bit different than that. And so, what I think, I think you guys posted just recently that the average startup founder is, in their 40s. And I think there's a reason for that, because you've got some experience under your belt, and it's a little bit easier to come up with a clear direction of what you are trying to get out of this.
Yeah. I can also get like philosophical, pedagogical, I don't know. But like as much as you're going to learn things that you wouldn't be forced to learn when you like launch a startup or be entrepreneurial, there's like that like deeper learning about yourself. I think that's what you're alluding to, right? Like what do you really want out of life? Do you want to really work? Frankly, we all think we want to work for ourselves, but I'll tell you, when you're working for yourself, all of a sudden you're like, I'm not the kind of person who does this. There's a motivation question. You don't have a boss, you have 1,000 bosses. You have all your customers, right? It's so just to even know that at some point in your life before you there's just so much learning, and that usually is itself an end, right? So unicorn, great. Set for life, great. Like, extra money to go out on the weekends, great. But like, really, if you have the right mindset, you can do this and get a lot out of it. There's a corollary to this, and I know you guys are doing this as well, which is if you're not necessarily getting massive financial returns out of your startup, probably better not to like mortgage yourself to do it, right? Like
for sure,
sustainably, right?
Yeah,
and
definitely.
The world's your oyster if you have infinite runway.
Yeah, I mean, Lance and I both have families. We got spouses and kids, and so we're doing this, in addition to a day job. We're not quite at the point where we can just throw ourselves all into it. We're both looking forward to that day, and it's rapidly approaching, so that's exciting. But at the same time, you want traction, and a lot of those. You can't just play startups like you're talking about. You can't just be a entrepreneur when you've got families and kids. It's a lot more real. And so but the advantage here is that we also are able to fund the startup ourselves. And so we're looking at every dollar, because that's a dollar that could have gone into my savings account or my healthcare account or my kids' college fund or all these different things. It's like, oh man, I am going to be watching the ad spend super closely. I'm going to be watching those hosting costs and all these different things. But we do have the money, so we're able to play ball in this bootstrap stage without the need for giant seed money.
I think it's such a good way to build. Well, I think we've thrown some good ideas around. I think your story, Geoffrey, is really great. So let's wrap up here, because I want to make sure everyone knows how to find you, how to follow up with you. So whether it's socials, whether it's your website, plug us the CTA, and then we'll get out of here.
For sure. So you can find us on our website, gobletqa.com. Same on Twitter, at gobletqa. And for anyone who is aware that they don't have sufficient coverage, which is most development teams, and if you want to solve that problem, we'd love to help. Let us test for you.
Perfect. So reach out to Geoffrey, find him on Twitter, get over to gobletqa.com and give it a go. Geoffrey, thank you so much for joining. Wonderful conversation, exciting for what you're building. This was a really great chat.
Andrew, thanks so much.
The Backseat Startup Podcast is brought to you by StartupStage, formerly known as Startup Founder Daily. StartupStage is the place to showcase your startup and compete for features across our channels. Each week, users can vote for their favorite startups. The top 3 companies, as determined by the votes, are then selected for special features across our blog, podcast, newsletter, and social media platforms. Hit the link in the description below to apply.